welcome to the You're a Tourist podcast, where we get very serious and share a laugh or two about all the good, the bad, and the ugly parts of tourism that you may or may not have ever even thought about. By the end of the episode, hopefully, we can give you a few tips to help make you a better tourist. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Dudley, and today we're going to be taking a deep dive into what it's like to travel when you have a disability. And joining me today for this topic, so my guest today she was born with Arthrogryposis and uses a wheelchair daily. She's also a disability rights activist, a singer, an actress who can be heard as the voice of Dahlia in Disney's animated feature Wish. And she currently works as the Citywide Accessibility Coordinator for the city of Long Beach. Please help me welcome to the show, Jennifer Kumiyama.
Hi, Katie.
Hey, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Jennifer. Well, and I didn't tell you this whenever we were chatting just a second ago. So before we jump into the topic of the day, a game that I like to play with all of my guests is called Tourists in the News. It's just a little game that kind of helps remind us who we're working with here, remind us some of the crazy things that tourists get into. And so we're going to go over 3 different headlines. And what's going to happen is I'm going to read you part of the headline and you're going to try and guess the part of the headline that's missing. Okay. And you can ask up to 3 clarifying questions. I always say that as though it's like Bible but I've made up the rules.
Sure.
You can ask as many questions as you want. Okay, so are you ready to play?
Absolutely. Let's go.
All right, here we go. Headline number 1. Headline number 1. U.S. tourist fined $2,000 for bringing what to Turks and Caicos?
Fines $2,000 for bringing, was it bullets? Ammunition?
There you go. Spot on. Yep.
I remember that. I read it recently. Yeah.
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 And that's
wild.
just it. Yeah, it's actually, I've used it as headlines on this, but whenever I was looking for headlines for this episode, I was like, it's still going on. So I'm just going to bring it up. Yeah. Because now it says, so for anybody who hasn't heard of this story by now, essentially now we're up to 5. So we're up to 5 Americans that have done this at different times. But essentially, Turks and Caicos has had a huge violent crime outbreak, gun-related crime. And so they're really cracking down on bringing ammunition into the country. And so 5 different American tourists have been caught with ammunition in their luggage. I mean, all of them say they had no idea. It was an honest mistake. The rules are rules, folks.
Yeah.
We expect people to follow the laws here in the U.S. We got to follow them where we go.
Absolutely,
folks, it's
100%.
as simple as that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I wondered. I was like, this is a popular one, so that one might be a little too easy. Let's see if I can get you on the second one.
Okay.
Here we go. Headline number 2. Australian tourists fined for doing what in fountain?
Fine for doing what? Playing in the fountain?
Yeah, so not playing, but yeah, they were doing something in the fountain.
Skinny dipping? Or just dipping?
Yeah, I'm sure there have been people skinny dip in there. Yes, but they actually, probably because the first line of the article is specific to say that 2 women fully dressed.
Okay.
Yes, but they were filmed by bystanders as they swam around undisturbed in the landmark fountain, which was inaugurated in 1762.
Wow.
Yeah. So the women, both aged 28, reportedly decided to emulate a classic scene from the movie La Dolce Vita to celebrate one of their birthdays. So, I mean, of course, they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
What's it matter?
I know. What? So they were arrested or they were fined?
They were fined.
Um, so
Yeah.
the point of going on vacation is to like spend money on fun things and good things to eat and excursions, not
Yeah.
on like illegal activity, I would say, I guess.
Right. Yeah. It's like, can you not just get enough out of it?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what, and this is what we say for so many things. I've lost it over here. Okay. This is what we say for like so many things like that. When tourists go out and they, again, it's just like, oh, I just have to have my one thing. I get to do it and I don't care what matters. Well,
Mhm.
there's been so many of these incidences that even the Rome tourism counselors, so like people who are for tourism are like calling to say we're going to have to shut down some
Yeah.
of these sites because like I think the quote says the fines from the police and the numerous appeals for common sense are no longer enough. So it's just the we can't have nice things situation,
That's really unfortunate.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
And
And we're
also just
seeing,
think about how much it ruins it for other people.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we're seeing that in a lot of places in the national parks and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, where it's just like the whole idea of it's preserving something for the
Yeah.
next generation to get to enjoy it too. I think it's gone.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
it's
almost completely gone. I completely agree. I completely,
right. Yeah.
yeah.
That's what I
Well, that's
talked to my,
unfortunate. That's really
Mhm.
unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah. I talk to my tourism students about this all the time. I'm like, and I ask them, I say, well, what do you think? Like, do you think we can right this ship? Or do you think we all just have a party and watch the world burn? And thankfully, most of them are somewhere in the middle of that spectrum.
Good, good. That makes me feel a little bit better. Now, if we
There's
can
hope.
just get the rest of the world on board.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're very much in a time where people do things for shock factor and those likes or follows on social media that garner, income. Like where do we draw
Hmm.
the line of, you know, how not to
Yeah.
ruin things for other folks, Some people
Right.
and also too, some people have the luxury of traveling more than a few times in their life. And there are other people, for whatever reason, for financial limitations, who are only able to go to that one place that they've ever wanted to go once in their life. Or that's
Right.
what they've worked for their entire life. And I think it's really unfortunate that we don't have the common decency or consideration for
Mm-mm.
the limitations that it then puts on for other people.
Right. And
Yeah.
also, yeah, for the people who live in
Hmm.
those areas, it's just
Hmm.
like, yeah, some people just happen to live
Hmm.
in a place that also happens to be a tourism destination.
Hmm.
And it's just like, that doesn't mean that those people deserve to be on display or to be treated a
Yeah.
certain way or whatever it is that we see tourists doing
Yeah. Yeah.
these days. Huh. Okay. Well, here's our headline number 3. So, headline number 3 there's a lot of different ways that I can tee up this headline that I can talk about it. So, what I usually like to do with headline number 3 is um is take us right into the topic of the day on
Sure.
how to do it. And then also, sometimes the headlines are the only laugh on the episode, but
Yeah.
also we don't want to talk about we don't want to laugh at the idea of traveling with a disability or anything like that. But with that also is when I was just trying to look for a headline to do it, just the airlines, just the alarming amount of headlines of just negative
Mhm.
experiences and things like that
Mhm.
with the airlines. So I was like, well, that's definitely gonna drop us into our topic of the day. So instead of putting it on the tourist on this one, my headline on this one is actually about what happened with an airline.
Sure.
Um, so the headline says disabled Ryanair passenger left shocked as plane does what?
Takes off with them still on the airplane waiting for their mobility device.
Oh, it was so close. I was just like, am I accidentally sharing my screen here?
No, you're not. It takes off. Were they waiting to get off, getting assistance getting off the plane?
No, taking off is part of it,
Okay.
but it wasn't waiting to get off.
Oh, taking off without their mobility device?
Without them
Oh,
is what it was. Yeah.
so they didn't even get on the plane.
No. So, yeah. The answer, so the whole headline reads, disabled Ryanair passenger left shocked as plane takes off while she's still on the tarmac.
Mm.
Yeah. So
Was she left
apparently,
because of her disability?
yeah. So that's what it was. Is so her and her husband but there were 7 travelers total. They were on a shuttle that lifts and raises you up and puts you on the plane. So they were all on the shuttle on time on the tarmac, and they were watching people board on the other side of the plane. And then all of a sudden, the plane started to move and it took off. And like, they didn't tell them anything. They didn't know where their luggage was with medication, anything like that. And then when asked what happened, so essentially then finally somebody came along and got them all on a flight at 6 a.m. the next morning. But that was like the first they'd ever even heard of what happened. And then what happened is Ryanair said that it's not us that does it. It's the airport that does it. And then the airport's like, it's not us that does it. It's a third party that does it.
Of course.
Right. And so essentially nobody got anything. They essentially just got an apology, I guess.
Where is Ryanair based out of?
The headquarters are located in Dublin, Ireland. Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, that is not a growing trend. It's just an alarming trend that exists among airlines, regardless of whether or not they're, in our nation or outside. There's always a figure to blame. And they're pointing in all directions, especially when it comes to like accessibility issues, and the airlines and that industry are not included in the Americans with Disabilities Act. Therefore, they get past a lot of,
why are the airlines? Why are they not included in that?
I can't really give you that answer, but it's just a very unfortunate situation. I do think that Secretary Buttigieg's office is doing a great job at working harder and faster to get equity for air travelers with disabilities. But at the same time, I feel like travelers with disabilities are treated as if, we don't make up a large part of that economy. A couple of years ago, I think it was like $80 million was of that economy was from people with disabilities, some sort of disability. And that's a lot of money.
Right.
So it's not saying that, your dignity and your rights are only worth how much you can pay, but it does say that people with disabilities do make up a very pretty large population of tourism.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So. Yeah. It was, like I said, there was ample articles to choose from of stuff like that, of getting left, of getting, overnight. Someone who was hard of hearing, deaf, was left stranded at an airport overnight. Nobody communicated with them, stuff like that. Trying to get to the restroom and falling and breaking an arm. And it was just, Okay, well, we'll dive into all of that later. Right. But let's start here at the top. So let's go in a little. I've told a little bit of your background, your acting, your singing, all of that kind of stuff. And then let's talk about your traveling. So just kind of kick us off wherever you want to start.
I love to travel. It does get harder as I get older. I'm 44 now. When I became an adult and started traveling more, I was able to travel by myself for like day trips, like up to the capital, or up north in the Bay Area to see friends and hang out with them for the day and then fly back home. But as I get
Mm-hmm.
older, it's a little bit more difficult for me to be by myself. Um, I've
Mm-hmm.
traveled, um, I've traveled a lot, but not to very many different places, which is something that I'd like to change in my very near future.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of my favorite places to go to and that I go almost annually, of course, is New York, because I'm definitely a Broadway fan,
Ah,
and Hawaii, just to, get that little tropical R&R time away from work and my crazy schedule. But, I would like to explore more of Europe. Before the
mm-hmm.
pandemic, I went to London and Paris. I would like to go to Scotland,
Mm.
Italy. Um, I would even like to go to my dad's country of Guam. To
Okay.
visit and things like that. So and there's also a lot of the United States that I really, really would like to see.
Yeah.
More of our central states and things like that. I've been to Texas, Colorado, Nevada, Oregon, New York, Florida, but I still feel like I would love to experience Mardi Gras,
Oh, there
maybe,
you go. Yeah.
as a tourist, and just I feel like our nation has a lot of really great places um, that I would really like to see before my time here on Earth ends.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And that is a lot of times people always think of traveling and tourism and stuff. Of it has to be that big trip. It has to be overseas. It has to be wherever. But yeah, it is. Like you say, I mean, California is a big state, so sometimes it's hard to get out of it. But we're a day trip away from all kinds of
Oh
different
yes.
places. Yeah.
Hmm.
And different people, different beliefs, different
Hmm.
cultures, different everything, all right here in our own country. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I've hit most of the states, the Northeast, which
Hmm.
you could knock those out in like a day, a half
Yeah.
a day.
Yeah.
I could whip out the Vermont, New Hampshire, all
Yeah.
of that stuff. I just got to do that on a day and say, fine, I finally got there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And I,
Go
I
on.
think I would really like to travel by train as well. Maybe a little cross-country train trip or a
Yeah.
short one to start with. I don't know, but like that's really something that's been on my mind lately. I do like other modes of transportation aside from flying. We do have
Yeah.
our own rail system here.
Hmm.
And so it's really awesome, but I would like to go further. I would like to go way outside by train.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've taken the train down to San Diego from Anaheim, like hopped on
Hmm.
Anaheim. Like that's fantastic.
Hmm. It
I
really
mean,
is.
you're just right by the coast and you just get to relax and like hang out. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only reason I laughed is then I was like, what was my other train? And it was like, oh yeah, I did a New Orleans to essentially Chicago.
Mhm.
It's like central Illinois, because that's where I'm from, and my brother lives down in New Orleans, and so we
Mhm.
took the train up, and that was an experience. I was very young though. I was 19, and I saw and heard a lot of things I hadn't seen and heard at 19 on a
Oh,
train
yeah.
from New Orleans.
I'm sure you have. 19
I grew up a
was
little on that train.
that's a part of your life where you're like really soaking up and like,
Oh yeah.
the outside world from whatever our household was like. It's very different traveling
Right.
when he first leaves home. But yeah, that sounds awesome.
So any favorites in there? So we've got favorites, we've got places maybe you wouldn't ever go again. Anything like that you'd like to share?
Um, Places I wouldn't ever go again. It's so funny that you asked that because I'm so good at like compartmentalizing trauma. So
Oh.
like I don't really know a place that I would never go again. I know that there's probably been travel situations where I'm like, that will never happen to me again.
Hmm.
But I don't think it has ever been something that's been determined by place. Um, no, I mean, not right now. Uh, as much as I love London and Paris, those
Hmm.
cobblestones really do a number on your wheelchair. So,
Oh.
I'm not saying that I would never go back. I'm definitely going back, but I need like big wheels, bigger wheels to conquer that infrastructure there. But like, I mean,
Yeah.
I've never really had an experience where I was like, I never will. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's places that I'm like, I feel like maybe are a little overrated. And I'm
Oh,
like,
totally. Yeah. Totally overrated, but not, you know,
not like, yeah,
yeah.
I'm writing it off my places to go. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so
Uh,
funny that you asked that because one of the first times that I went to Sacramento
mhm.
for work, I remember, and I had to stay like a couple nights. I think it was like 2 nights. I remember getting there and asking, this was a long time ago, probably in like early 2009, 2009. And I asked the lady at the front desk of my hotel, and I was like, what's the nightlife like around here? And she
Mhm.
said, oh, we've got a great PF Chang's down the street. And I was like, oh, didn't know PF Chang's was in the category of nightlife, but thank you.
Right.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
since then they've gotten a lot of, better at developing, things to do down there that are outside of PF Chang's. But I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
no, yeah, that was hilarious. That always sticks out to me when I talk about travel, and I haven't shared that with you because I literally went back to the hotel room and laughed hysterically. Nothing
Well,
against
it's
PF Chang's, but
right. And or anybody who likes to go there
Oh,
for their
yeah,
nightlife.
for their nightlife, but that is not my nightlife, or it
Do
wasn't.
you remember? It may have been around, I mean, and I don't know that PF Chang's was doing this, but it could have been around that same time or something. The places that I was living at the time, Applebee's, they tried to do that and they like wanted to turn into a night bar and it was like the Bee After Dark. Do you remember
No,
that?
I don't remember that, but why it makes me laugh though is because you're in Riverside. Where are you in
Oh,
Riverside?
I'm in Long Beach.
Oh, you're in Long Beach. Okay.
Yeah.
So I grew up in the Inland Empire
Okay.
and, in Fontana specifically, and there wasn't very much to do around there. I left when I was
Mhm.
20, but we would go to like the Applebee's or the Denny's or the Spires after like shows and stuff and just be like, yeah, let's go. It's going to be great. And I'm like, but like did you say the Bee After Dark?
Yeah, I think it was like the Bee After Dark.
So funny. That's
Yeah.
totally something they would do though. It sounds spot on for Applebee's.
Because, yeah, me and my husband to this day will always say it when we see an Applebee's. We're like, you want to go
Mhm.
to the Bee? The
That
Bee
is
After
so
Dark?
funny. Don't be surprised if you get a message from me later on. Hey, meet me at the Bee for
Exactly. Yeah.
drinks. So funny.
Okay. So, and like I say, like I think it's funny that you talk about, compartmentalizing and stuff like that. And I think because again, this is like an exercise that I make my students do. Is I'm like, go and interview like someone older in your family, like a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, something like that, and ask them about a travel experience and ask them if they've ever had a negative experience. And the fact of the matter is like so many of them will come back with like, yeah, they said that everything was great and they loved it and they have no negative experiences, but they did walk in and like, they were treated this way and this person said this and this, and it's just like, yeah, because none of us want our travel experiences to be bad. Because
No.
it's that one part of our life that we're just like, this is going to be for me. It's going to
Yeah.
be fun.
Yeah.
Like, and I think, and so the good and the bad part of that is that we, in our recollection phase of our vacations, we do kind of let the negative drop away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And even if sometimes we didn't act like it while we were on that trip. But the problem with that then is it does kind of allow the tourism as a system, as a structure, kind of it allows some of the bad things that can create negative experiences to just keep going on.
Yeah.
When it's like, hey, if we could call them out, then maybe this would stop. Kind of similar to what we we're talking about the airlines. And that's what I was kind of, and again, admittedly, this was a very quick search that I was doing, but I was seeing that it took, so many formal complaints and things like that to get them moving in 2024. So that's kind of what I wonder is, it's not necessarily of like a negative experience that you've had, but is there anything that you just kind of wish or even just kind of baffles you of like, why is it still done this way? Like why has it got to be kind of difficult, or just because it's always been done type of situation?
I think the whole thing. You know, because if you think about it, like you said, we've worked so hard for our ability to travel, both financially and, you know, whatever other obstacles, you know, come
Mm-hmm.
with that, that we compartmentalize that and we let it go like water off the back. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I do think that speaking up, and the filing formal complaints the right way should be more welcome. Um,
Mm.
I do think that, you know, they have surveys that are supposedly random. But I do think, you know, like giving praise where it's deserved and then giving criticism where it's also deserved are two important things as a traveler. Also, too, as a traveler with a disability, I always tend to think less about what happened to me and why it happened, and more about how to not let it happen to the person with a disability behind.
There you go. Okay.
So making the travel industry more inclusive by speaking up when I feel that I've not been treated well, or something didn't work out the way that it should have, or, you know, there's a lack of communication. And, you know, I think one other thing too is just to also remember that, you know, there are millions of people that make up the travel industry, probably
Mm-hmm.
thousands in one day.
Right.
Um, if not millions, but that we all have off days, and that sometimes
Yeah.
things really are accidents, but also too that sometimes systemically things are just not right. And we have
Yeah.
to address those systemic issues, um, for them not to happen. In addition to that, like, the traveling industry is the biggest probably industry in the world, right? We
Mm-hmm.
also have to consider that, some of these people, like these air serv people that are responsible for, transferring people like myself in and out of my wheelchair, then in and out of the aisle chair to my seat and back, aren't properly trained, aren't properly
Right.
paid. Um, you know, and just so many things. So I think, um, it's so funny because I take the city bus a lot. I love public transportation, and
Mm-hmm.
they have a recording of our police chief scared long. If you see something, say something, and that
Oh
is
yeah.
definitely me. You know, and I think, you know, just being more open to receiving that criticisms, and then, you know, really doing the work to fix things so that
Mm-hmm.
travel can be as inclusive as possible for people who are older, people with disabilities, people who have children, people who don't speak, you know, the popular language in the area. Just
Mm-hmm.
there's so many things, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's too many things to name.
Yeah. And I think, and you bring up a great point with the size of tourism. I I was actually just talking about this today. What I get a lot of, again, be it students, be it people on the street when I tell them what I do, be it the media. Um, People like to talk about tourism as though tourism did this, tourism does that, tourism creates jobs, tourism destroys communities, tourism, and it's like, tourism is not a living, breathing entity. Tourism is propped up by people.
Many different, yeah,
Yeah, many different people at many different
yep,
levels, from the highest
hmm,
government to frontline workers and
hmm,
everybody in between. And
hmm,
so that's where I think it gets a lot of, I think where we kind of talked about, with the plane, where it's just like, well, we blame it on them, we blame it on them, we blame it on, or we blame it on tourism.
okay,
And it's like, well, people have made choices. Uh, People have made choices too, like you say, not change things that need to be changed, or
hmm,
even like what you say of where it's the people that bring you onto a plane and move you from your chair to the seat on the plane, and then vice versa, and how they're not trained in that. Like, that's a choice somewhere that someone made, and it's a choice that someone could also reverse.
hmm,
Right. And
yeah,
so that's, I think, when you brought up of how big tourism
yeah,
is and the
hmm,
amount of people that you touch anytime you're on vacation or has touched you,
hmm,
as something. So a question then that also comes from that is, it seems as though people are making strides and that people are, people, and a lot of people are not trying to be negative or create negative experiences. Have you run into anything where it's like people are really trying to do it right, but it's just kind of not there? Just like it could be to the point of it's like you're almost making it a little worse, or like you need to just take it one more step. Is there any kind of thing like that?
I mean, back to like the air serve and things like that. I think that, it's a service that makes a huge deal in an air traveler with a disability, or even a senior air traveler. It makes a huge difference in our ability to be able to travel via airline. But it's also something that needs real work from the inside. And like you said, someone or some people have not acknowledged the root of the problem. Therefore, the problem is perpetuated by the continual use of air serve and just no time, lack of staffing, all of that, to have that operation happen smoothly and successfully. I think a little bit of training would go a long, long way. And that's really one of the things that I think about when you ask that question. In addition to that, just the fact that people with disabilities travel alone. I'll never forget the first time I traveled. It had been a while since I'd been somewhere, and I was literally just going to San Jose to have, a day with my friends. We just moved from here, local down Southern California. And I went to TSA, and the TSA person was like, "Who are you traveling with?" And I was like, "Nobody." And she goes, "You're traveling alone? You have a disability. You're traveling alone?" I was like, "Thank you for letting me know that I have a disability." At the time, I was like, I'm 30 whatever years old, and I'm grown. That literally is what I said. I said, "So you're gonna technically pat me down so I can hop on this plane or not?"
Right.
So I just think that just realizing that, whether it be for as a luxury or necessity, people travel, bus, plane, train, automobile, whatever. And that we have to be aware and conscious of the type of people that, we might encounter in our workday as somebody who works in any of those entities.
Yeah, in a people industry where you're just seeing people all day long, you're bound to have people with varying abilities whenever that happens. Yeah, and it would be insane. That's what I've I had a guest on another episode, and her son is autistic. So she was kind of talking about traveling with, neurodiverse people and things like that. And that's what one of her frustrations really was kind of the TSA. It was more of the impatience of it all, of just like always she already had to have more supplies and things like that than other people around her, and then just kind of the impatience that she felt of doing that, of just whatever she was feeling on the inside, they were kind of confirming on the outside.
And it's like, I don't know, my whole thing, like, I have a very love-hate relationship with TSA. Mostly it's like, I don't want to say hate, but it's already like, if you know that I'm probably a traveler is already going to be stressed out, should we not perpetuate that with attitude or not being specific enough in your direction, or what can you do in your day-to-day job where you serve people to be more people-y, friendly, you know what I mean? So I don't know. And I have a very best friend who was a travel nurse, And
Okay.
she would say to me every time I would complain, I would be like, "I'm so sorry. I feel like it's put me in a funk." You know what? We would travel a lot together, and something would happen, and that's what I would say. And she'd be like, "No, it's not your fault." She goes, "When people come to your job, do you give them the best service possible?" Absolutely, I do. I really do. And I have to understand that when people come to me as a civil servant, that
Yeah.
9 out of 10 they're going to be at their wits end, and that
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to make them feel more confident in the system and confident that I will navigate them in the right way and to the path to where the end result, their desired end result. And she goes, that's part of the problem, is that a lot of people don't feel that way. You know, work ethic is not where it should be. But
Yeah.
I feel like that's a whole nother conversation.
That, yeah, that definitely is. Uh, but yeah, because I mean, yeah, we could get into
Hmm.
the pay and the respect and all of
Hmm.
that kind of stuff too, and that's where it's hard. Um, yeah, and I think about, and we're really picking on the airlines here, but
I
I've
feel really
got some
bad.
beef with the
Yeah.
airlines.
I feel bad for the airlines. If you want, I could tell you my problems with Greyhound too, or Amtrak.
Yeah, but yeah, it was like kind of going back to that idea of it's people. It was, I remembered last summer, remember when just flying went chaos and like
Yes.
all the planes had oversold and all of this, and these CEOs are coming on and they're just like, we have no idea what happened. It's like, your company sold tickets that didn't
They
exist.
did. You don't know what happened. That's what you get paid millions some odd dollars to know, is to know what
Exactly.
happened.
If nothing else, yeah.
It is not it is not okay to get paid that much money and not know what happened.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What it
Yeah.
is, it's like when all of us know what happened, like you saw dollar signs and you're like, people are
Yeah.
buying them up. Let's just
Yeah.
keep selling them and we'll deal with it later.
Sell your fake seats.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was hilarious.
Oh,
Not, I mean,
so
not
it,
really hilarious, but like, what? You don't know? Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And they're like, you're paid to know. That's
Yeah.
kind of all you're paid to do right now is you're
Yeah.
paid to know.
Yeah. But
So,
I will say that on like a person to person basis, I do feel
mm,
that there are a lot of people who really enjoy what they do for a living in this industry,
mhm.
and who really try hard every day to make it memorable or just
Yeah.
smooth, which is all you can
Hmm.
really ask for as a traveler, whether you have a disability or not.
Right.
You know, and I see that and I appreciate it very much so.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I mean. And there's some places that are kind of known for being really great at it. Like Disney.
Hmm.
Um, I don't I don't know much about Disney. Like I've weirdly made it my own personal protest. I've never been to Disney. I'm a tourism professor and I've never been to any Disney, land, world, whatever. And so now I'm so old that I feel like it's my thing. I'm just going to say I don't go to Disney. And of course, I have some beefs with some of the things Disney
Hmm.
does. But also, you can't argue that they do a lot of things really well. That's why so many people copy so many things that they do. So would you say that Disney does pretty good as far as accommodating all different types of guests?
It's so funny that you asked that, because there is something called the DAS Pass
Okay.
at Disneyland and Disney World. I'm not sure what other parks outside of the country, but there's a
Mm-hmm.
huge uproar from the disability community, where Disneyland has revamped the policy for this pass. You know, so instead
Okay.
of providing it to people with disabilities, they've decided to, one, put people with disabilities through an interview process to
What?
legitimize the disability
Oh,
and
okay.
either approve or deny access of use of the DAS Pass. Now, that's so many red flags. I can't even, there's no time in this.
Right.
I have no time with you right now today to discuss. However, it excludes a lot of people, specifically adults with disabilities that are, number one, not visual, not seen. A
Mm,
lot of our immunocompromised or neurodivergent,
gotcha. Yeah.
siblings in the disability community, and people with physical disabilities whose bodies and disabilities are exacerbated by heat or, extreme weather, whether it be heat or cold, and which happens in California, and it's not working out. It's not working out. I will admit that I have not tried to use the DAS Pass because I don't feel like I really need it. I don't go to get on very many rides these days. I'm definitely a show. I'm like the granny that my nieces and nephews like. They're like, can you come with us to Disneyland? Which means number one, can you pay for our meals? And number two, can you hold my stuff while I get on rides? And I'm cool with that. But there are people, who still want to get on the rides, and they should have access. For as much as it is, they should have access to those rides, equitable access at that. So I will say that for every good thing that does happen revolving around inclusivity, there's just this huge boulder that gets dropped in your lap, and you're like, well, there goes that, But as far as the rides go, there are a handful of rides in both Disneyland and California Adventure Theme Park that do have wheelchair access, which is cool, but I think that DAS Pass issue right now with Disney is causing a huge uproar on social media, and I'm just waiting for something's got to give. I've never heard of a place that is legally allowed to ask you specific questions about your disability, other than, do you have a disability? Yes or no? So, and I understand why they're doing it a lot. They feel that a lot of people have taken advantage of the situation. But at the same time, the disability population is the fastest growing, number one. Number two, anybody can become a part of this community at any time in their life.
That's true.
And it's not something that you're born into or that you age into. People get into accidents, people acquire illness, and there's just so many things. So that's all I have to say on that.
Yeah, that is insane. Yeah. Because it does, like you say, it brings up so many legal questions, so many of like, who are the people interviewing? Who are they? Are they, the college students who are doing an internship there? Like, who's happy? Who determines this? Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah. I can't imagine being asked to legitimize my disability.
No. Well, that kind of also takes us into like another question. So again, we on this podcast, we kind of like to talk a lot about other navigating tourism spaces around other tourists, which can be difficult. And weirdly, right now, it seems like it is even more difficult because everybody's just on their own vacation these days, and everyone tends to want VIP access. So we see things. So right now, just exactly like what you just talked about with this Disney Pass, where maybe a tourist could be like, what's the big deal if I did this or something? And the big deal is this: it could turn into where you're actually creating negative experiences, negative barriers, challenges, things like that for the people that these things are put in place for. So have you ever, like, what is it like, or tourists, have you ever just had like an experience where you're just like, get out of here, or like some tourist has been rude, or has tourists been just kind of nice? Have you lucked out in tourists, the impatient thing?
I'm very much a people person. And I try not to make things my issue unless I see an actual injustice. Meaning that if somebody's yelling at somebody, whether they be a tourist or an employee of, say, the bus line or, the hotel or anything, I try not to say anything. But I'm definitely the person who's like, you don't have to be mean. You don't have to be mean. Stop being mean. Maybe you'd get something if you weren't mean. Just be nice. Like, be nice and try to have empathy. Like, yes, they work in a service industry, but they're also human. They're also, parents. It's probably not their only job.
Well,
When we
yeah.
talk about service workers, we're not talking about like people who are making millions or even thousands of dollars a month. We're talking about people who are literally, quite literally living paycheck to paycheck. Like,
Right.
chill out. You know,
Right.
if you
And
don't
they
feel
deal
like
with
you're being,
tourists all day.
yes, and people like that all the time. So I try not to make things my issue unless it's like that was me, and I'm very much that person. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
you don't have to say that. You don't have to say that.
No.
Or can you get someone else? Don't talk to him. Stop talking to that person. Don't engage. Don't engage. Or,
Yeah.
empowering people by saying, you have the right not to give them service. But
Yeah.
I don't come across that very often, knock on wood.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
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 And I try to remember myself to grant grace first before I get upset. I don't feel like I'm hothead. But
Mm-hmm.
I try to exhaust all of my energy and asking for what I need in a very decent and overly communicative way before I'm like, okay, they're not understanding either,
Mm-hmm.
because if I feel like they are not understanding because they don't want to, but because of
Right.
the lack of empathy or a lack of knowledge, then that's when I start to get frustrated. And I'm a Pisces, so my frustration is not to like get frustrated and yell. My frustration is to like get frustrated and cry, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, if it gets that bad, I do try not to get emotional, but I
Yeah.
luckily don't have that. But I do speak up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is. And that's something too with like tourists. It's like I'd like to get a tourist on here and ask them, a tourist that's just kind of gone off the handle, maybe they've gone viral, maybe we've all seen it, and be like, did you get what you wanted? Like, how
Like,
often does
no,
that work for you?
or just like, what happened to you?
Right.
What happened?
What's going on in your life?
What happened to you that you had to be so nasty?
Like, do you ever think about that
The
anymore?
quest
Yeah,
to create a more decent and kind world starts with us as an
exactly.
individual, and you are not helping the situation.
No, no. And just because you're on vacation doesn't
Doesn't
mean
mean
that you get
no,
to.
no. Also, money cannot buy you respect. You also have to
Oh,
give some sort of respect yourself,
exactly.
you know?
Yeah.
So
And I
relax.
think that's a big, I really unfortunately think that that is a big part of tourists treating tourist workers so badly, is because they think that there's like a money and a power imbalance of just
Mm,
like, I'm on vacation and you're serving me vacation. And it's
nope,
just like,
nope.
yeah.
My boyfriend gets kind of annoyed with me because every time we travel, even my friends, we travel and
Hmm.
we like leave a hotel room, all the bedding comes off because they're gonna have to change it anyway. So just help them and take it off. All of the towels
Hmm.
put in one pile. Close up all the trash goes in the trash can. And they're like, "Why are we doing this? We have room service." I was like, "Yes, but how would you feel if you had to clean X amount of rooms per day for an hourly rate when you know darn well you deserve more?"
Right.
And then yes, we do the tip,
Yeah.
the tip. And I
There
think
you go,
that's another thing
folks.
that frustrates me
Yeah.
about travelers is that please consider tipping, like include tipping in your expenses when you travel. Because the
Yeah.
people who will do the most for you and will probably be the ones to make your trip more memorable are the people who are service workers.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. And again, and that's what I get so frustrated with the, skilled versus non-skilled
mhm.
work. And it's just like the ability, just like what we've talked about, the ability to like keep a cool head and and deliver a service while you're getting screamed at, while you've got people waiting, while you've got all of this stuff going on, while you're making no money.
Mhm.
Like, you tell me that's not a skill. Like,
That's very much a skill.
and a
Waking
lot of
up
people
and
don't have it.
repeating those actions is a skill.
Right.
I don't know. Sorry,
Ugh.
that deserved a eye roll. I don't know if the camera caught that, but I was like, that's my response. That's what I get frustrated. I'm like,
We're getting out there,
yeah,
tourism workers. Oh, we're
yes,
spreading the
yes.
word for you.
There are better wages and more respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's something that I don't even know what we were talking about that got me onto it. So, and this one truly is of just kind of my again, admittedly, my own kind of ignorance on the topic and things like that. So when we are talking about accessibility, we are talking about inclusivity, equity, all of that kind of stuff. So, and again, when I searched for headlines and things like that, there were headlines that said uh the disability population is the could bring in this much money for tourism, and stuff like that. And so that's where I'm kind of wondering, and again, just straight your opinion, could this be one of those missing the marks? Like, could it just be, can't they just be tourists, and we create an opportunity, or like, you know, disability themed trips or something? That may have sounded ignorant what I just said, but, or do you think it is a step forward and a necessary step forward?
I think it's very necessary. It's just considering the fact that it's the largest growing population on Earth and will continue to be as time goes on. But I also think that because there is such a lack of inclusivity when we talk about access in traveling and tourism, that I just think it needs to be addressed. There are in local government, we are supposed to follow Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which means essentially, and I'm definitely abbreviating here, that we have to provide equitable services to all people that live in Long Beach that live, work, and visit in Long Beach, that are places, spaces, programs, and services. So it's very much of not a separate but together. So universally providing services and accessibility in everything that we do, versus something that's separate. The reality is about when we talk about, like, are there, tourism groups that are geared toward people with disabilities? There are. There are. And someone can very well choose to go on that excursion, and which I think is great. But on a whole, I do think that the industry itself needs to be held accountable for the lack of inclusivity when we talk, and universal access. Because it's just, people should be able to pay for something and get, what they deserve out of it, what everyone else is entitled to. You sure the ticket prices aren't lower, the hotel prices aren't lower, the theme park prices definitely aren't lower. And so, like, why should someone pay more for being treated as...
Yeah. Are there ever instances to where you do have to pay more? I'm just thinking of, again, I don't know, sorry, airlines, it's just a low-hanging fruit that's in my head. But like, I'm thinking of like people who maybe need extra room, and for the longest time were forced to purchase 2 seats. And things like that.
So here's the thing: in our personal spaces, in our personal built environment, which is oftentimes our homes and our cars and our offices, right? Those things, we have created these environments that are accessible to us. So does it cost more for somebody like me to travel? Yes, it could. What does that look like? Renting an accessible van, which is a lot more than renting, a standard sedan type car. Renting Hoyer lifts so I can get in and out of bed. Renting shower chairs so I can take a bath, or paying extra to stay in that hotel because their pool has a body lift and this one doesn't. So, also considering the fact that a lot of times, for me, it's 100% of the time, I have to pay for, when I travel, I automatically have to pay for 2 people to travel because I need a caregiver.
Okay, yeah.
So the cost of living in any aspect of life is going to most likely be greater for a person with this.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So exactly, it's kind of like, again, when you think of the people complaining as to like, oh, they get on the plane first. And it's just like, calm down.
Mhm.
It'll be okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like no one's getting anything over on you.
Yeah. And actually, it's kind of like a dignity thing. Like, you're strapped, sorry, airlines, you're strapped in this itty bitty seat, like strapped from
Mm,
pretty much your chest down to your ankles in a chair. Like, I don't want people staring at me like that, being dragged down
uh-huh.
an aisle. You know what I mean? Like, I would
Yeah.
like to get on first and get off last. That way, I'm not a spectacle. I don't want to be a spectacle. It's about dignity, treating people with dignity and granting them that grace to be in a dignified situation that's already not, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, we might have to get on first, but we have to definitely get off last. So tell me
Yeah.
where's the come up in that.
Yeah.
Especially if I've got an hour to get from plane A to plane B, you know?
Right.
So yes, it
Yeah.
might seem like people with disabilities get more perks, but in the long run, it really isn't that. If you
Mm-mm.
look at things in the back end.
Yeah. And just like you pointed out, it's, you don't just get to get on Expedia one day and be like, here's my bundle, rental
No.
car,
Yeah.
flight, hotel. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. And then
yeah.
afterwards, calling all of those entities at least once a month to remind them that you're coming
Yeah.
and
And
that
then
there's availability. And it's still,
I was going to
it's that,
say,
it's that stress of worrying about just being provided the bare minimum that you need to exist as a human being. The accessible
yeah.
place to sleep, bathe, and restroom.
Yeah. Which is just something that so many people take for granted when they
Completely.
travel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, here's where let's give some maybe I don't know. I was gonna say a positive, but looking back, so you say you're 44, so 44 years. Have you seen the landscape evolve and get better? Have you seen it stagnate? Do you have good hopes of where we're going?
Yes, I do have hope. I have a lot
Okay.
of hope for the future and for the near future as well. I've seen a lot more they're called family restrooms.
Mm-hmm.
In airports or transportation hubs. A lot of times people with disabilities have caregivers of the opposite gender. And finding a restroom that we
Mm,
can both use comfortably and have other people use it comfortably is difficult. So we've seen, the non-gender restrooms or the family restrooms. That's great. We've also seen signage, a lot of signage directing people with disabilities on where to go and what to do and who to
okay.
contact, which is great. Um, I've also read a lot about, I think it's Delta, I hope I'm not wrong, Delta creating a plane that has a seat specifically for a person in a wheelchair to
Wow.
fly in, just being able to stay in our wheelchairs, which is a device that is made specifically for our bodies is great.
Yeah.
And little things too, like rideshare companies finally getting a fleet of
Mm,
accessible vans like Uber and Lyft. In LA County, they're getting more and more popular and more easier for riders like myself to find, which is great.
yeah.
Local transportation has really come a long way in a lot of places across the United States. And even when I was Europe, I did realize that. I'm very, very happy and excited to see that. Taking the tube and using rideshare in London and Paris was actually really easy.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Yeah.
um, and just being able to have those options, was really great.
Hmm.
More options for accessible rooms, more options for, um, more than one companion seat.
Yeah.
Just acknowledging the fact that the industry itself understands and realize that people with disabilities aren't just traveling with one other person. We're
Right.
parents, we're partners, we're in friend groups, and things like that. We're not just traveling with one person. Um,
Right.
or we don't just travel by ground.
Yeah.
So while there is a lot of work to do, I recognize and appreciate the work that is being done to one, bring our issues to the attention of the industry, and two,
Mhm.
to actually implement some of these low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. And I think that that goes back then and to answer my question of saying, like, should it be disability focused, whatever? It absolutely, because that's another part of tourism. When we get down to it, tourism is all about the money and we got to get more people in. So if you're a destination that can offer all of the things that you just talked about freely and to more than one person, so that more than one person with a disability can do it, then that's a marketing plus for that
Absolutely. Absolutely.
destination to get those dollars. Because
Absolutely.
I mean, you talk about Lyft and Uber having a fleet. I mean, but we're in LA and it's
Yeah,
just
I
like it
feel good
took
they
this
got some
long to
more
get to
rural
LA.
area. Yeah, it took this long because
Yeah.
yeah, I can't imagine what it's like for, like our fellow Californians in rural California.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, small, slow and steady,
As
little
long
steps
yeah.
for good steps,
Yeah. As
but
long as
bigger
it can
steps are what we're looking for. Yeah.
continues to move forward.
Yeah.
Okay, so this takes us, well, for one, I don't want to cut off any of this great conversation, but we are heading into the part where you get to tell tourists whatever you want to tell them.
Sure.
5 tips. Well, we'll see if we get to 5. Sometimes we get to talking too much and we run out of time.
Okay.
But any tips that you may have to other tourists, whether it is if you're going to interact with them in general, whether just them when they're out there in the travel world, what would you always like to say to tourists? Just be a better guest.
You know, it's okay to make small talk with people with disabilities, like you do everyone else. You don't have to ask my partner or my travel partner what I would like or how I'm doing. Ask me. Um, you know, um, uh, be mindful of, using the bigger stalls in restrooms. While
Mm,
that is nice option to have, that's oftentimes there's only one accessible stall in the restroom. So I'm
yes.
not going to wait in a line where people have access to all, like maybe 5 foot stalls, that they can get in and out when I'm just waiting for mine, the one that I can use. So think
Right.
twice about using accessible stalls, and buying those accessible seats for concerts or sporting events, things like that. Um, I don't know, and just people with disabilities are people for anything else, just like everyone else. So you know, it's if you see me having a good time, you to say hi. I'm all for it. Yeah. Just don't call me Speed Racer and don't ask me if I want to race. The answer is no.
Oh, no.
I get
Oh,
so
I could
annoyed.
see that happening so often around like drunk areas of tourist
Yes. And that's why
places.
exactly what's they mentioned it all the time. They're like, hey, Speed Racer. I'm like, my mother did not name me Speed Racer, and it is not on my birth certificate. No.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Also, I'm
Oh,
44. My name is Jennifer. Thank you.
right. Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Nice to
Yeah.
meet you. Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, again, Jennifer, for coming on here, talking, uh, telling us a little bit more about what it's like to travel with a disability, where we're at, where we're headed, ways that people in the tourism industry can help and make it be better. Again, make tourism a little bit better for a lot of people. Are there any? Do you want to tell the listeners to follow you on any social media or website or anything? Or
Yes, you can follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Kumi Rocks, KumiRockN.
right. All right. And for all things tourism, go ahead and subscribe to this podcast, or you can follow us on Instagram or TikTok at You're a Tourist. And remember, at the end of the day, you can call yourself whatever you'd like, but you're a tourist. And the first step to getting better is admitting it. All right.